Welcome students. Today we will discuss manufacture and health effects of sugars. Sugars are carbohydrates in nature. They are typically named in relation to their size and chemical structure. They have been classified into monosaccharides, disaccharides, oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. Raw sugar is the name applied to sugar crystals obtained from the juice of sugarcane or sugar beet. Apart from sucrose, raw sugar contains reducing sugars like glucose and fructose, inorganic ash, mainly calcium and potassium salts, and other organic matter which includes gums, amino acids, and color components, essentially from the cane. These impurities must be removed from the sucrose during refining. Sugars play an important role in different food steps and bring sweetness. They also have important biological, sensory, physical, and chemical properties. Sugars help provide the taste, texture, and color of foods, extend their shelf life, which preserves the safety and quality of the food. Recent evaluations commissioned by the World Health Organization have concluded that limiting the amount of sugar added to foods and decreasing the intake of sugar-sweetened beverages would be beneficial in promoting public health, particularly with regard to reducing the risk of dental caries, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Production of sugar. Sugar is a valuable agricultural commodity. About 80% of the world's sugar comes from sugarcane, and about 20% comes from sugar beet. Sugar beet resembles root crops such as parsnip. Sugarcane is similar to bamboo, having a shiny outer coating and sweet, woody inner fiber. Sugarcane grows in the tropical and subtropical regions, while sugar beet grows in colder, more temperate regions. In 2013, the world's largest producers of cane sugar were Brazil, India, China, Thailand, and Mexico. The European Union is the world's largest sugar beet producer, with France, Germany, Poland, and the UK producing the most. Sugar beets are perishable and progressively lose sugar content from the moment they are harvested. Therefore, sugar factories are located close to sugar beet fields, mostly in rural areas. Sugar beets are washed, sliced into small pieces known as cosettes, and mixed with hot water. Lime and carbon dioxide are applied to clean the juice. The brown liquid is filtered and boiled under vacuum to produce thick syrup. This then begins to crystallize, and the crystals are separated from the syrup using a centrifuge. The processing of sugarcane is very similar. Sugarcane tends to be extracted in sugar mills in the country where it is grown through these processes: cutting, shredding, and crushing between heavy rollers, hot water spray, and lime to clarify the juice, filtering of the brown juice produced, boiling of juice under vacuum to form thick syrup, separation of raw sugar and molasses in a centrifuge. Brown raw sugar is then exported around the world for local refining. Now we will discuss production of starch-based sugars. Starch, together with other co-products, is extracted from cereal and tubers. In the European Union, the main raw materials used to produce starch are maize, wheat, and potatoes. The starch molecule is a long chain of glucose units. Through hydrolysis, these long chains can be broken into smaller chains to produce, amongst other starch derivatives, glucose syrups and dextrose. In the process called isomerization, some of the glucose units in glucose syrups can be converted to fructose to produce glucose-fructose syrups. Under European Union food legislation, the word fructose is part of the syrup name when the syrup contains more than 5% fructose, as glucose-fructose syrup up to 50% fructose, and fructose-glucose syrup above 50% fructose. In Europe, the most commonly produced of these syrups has a fructose content of 42%. In the US, the most commonly produced such syrup contains 55% fructose. It is known there as high fructose corn syrup. Now we will discuss refining of sugars. Raw sugar is the name applied to sugar crystals produced from the juice of sugarcane or sugar beet. Apart from sucrose, raw sugar contains reducing sugars, mainly glucose and fructose, inorganic ash, mainly calcium and potassium salts, and other organic matter which includes gums, amino acids and color components, essentially from the cane. These impurities must be removed from the sucrose during refining. The various steps of refining are affination. The first step is called affination, a French word meaning refining. The process consists of mixing the sugar with a saturated syrup to soften the adhering film of molasses. Then, sweetening and washing off as much of this adhering impure syrup as possible in centrifugal machines. The centrifugal machine utilizes the considerable gravitational force at the periphery of a basket sweetening at high speed. This means minimum contact time between wash water and sugar, thus reducing the amount of sugar dissolved in this process. The impure syrup is recycled but an excess is produced. This material contains recoverable sugar and is processed separately in the boil out section of the refinery. Recovered boil out sugars are returned for remelting with the washed sugar. The impurities are concentrated into molasses which can be regarded as a final byproduct. The washed or affined sugar is then dissolved utilizing sweet water from pots of the refinery process. At this stage, the melted liquor is temperature and density controlled. The liquor is screened to exclude fibrous material. Now, carbonation. In carbonation, milk of lime, that is calcium hydroxide, is added to the heated liquor and boiler flue gas containing carbon dioxide is bubbled through the mixture. It includes and occludes organic impurities such as the gums, amino acids and color components, removing them from the sugar syrup. The carbonation process is carried out in two stages to obtain an optimum quality precipitate for filtration, that is, a suitable size and distribution of precipitate particles. Measurement of the electrical resistance of the solution indicates the residual lime content. 80 to 90% of precipitation is sought in the first stage. The second stage is controlled by the measurement of the pH of the solution, which is important throughout the process and ensures complete precipitation of the lime. Now, pH control. The pH of factory liquors is of considerable importance. Below pH 7, sucrose is hydrolyzed to the reducing sugars like glucose and fructose, while above pH 9, alkali destruction of sugars occurs and colored components are formed. Now, we will discuss filtration. The calcium carbonate precipitate, including the impurities, is now removed in a pressure filtration stage using polypropylene filter cloth as supporting media and utilizing the calcium carbonate as a filter aid. The filter mud is later subjected to water washing to remove sucrose residue, and this mud is a waste material. Sweet sugar recovered by washing the mud is used for melting in an earlier stage. Now, char filtration. The relatively pure honey-colored liquor from the filtration stage, commonly known as raw liquor, is then subjected to final decolorization by contact with bone charcoal. The bone char consists of active carbon on a calcium phosphate skeleton. It has a high surface area and the unique ability to absorb color and inorganic ash impurities from the sugar. Following the decolorization cycle, the bone char is revivified first by water washing to remove inorganic impurities and then heating in the absence of air to 650 degrees Celsius to remove organic impurities. The decolorized fine liquor is now ready for the final refining and recovery step, which is achieved by crystallization in vacuum pans. Crystallization. Crystallization is not only a means to convert the sucrose to a more usable form, but also an important refining step, since pure sucrose tends to crystallize out of the solution, leaving most of the impurities in the associated syrup. The process is carried out under a reduced pressure of 75 to 90 kPa to allow a reduced boiling temperature of 60 to 70 degrees Celsius, so avoiding the further formation of color compounds. Vacuum is achieved by the use of an air pump and vapor contact condenser. These condensers utilize salt water for cooling. Fine liquor is concentrated until it is supersaturated, then stage is shock seeded by the addition of a small quantity of sucrose to give spontaneous nucleation of fine sucrose crystals. The crystals thus formed are grown under automatically controlled conditions until the desired final grain size is achieved. The pan contents known as massicute are then discharged to receivers prior to separation on automatic centrifugal machines. The sugar thus recovered is then dried and graded prior to packing, the syrup being recycled for 3 further recovery boilings. The final syrup is used as a starting material for other sugar products such as soft brown sugar, coffee crystals, golden syrup, and treacle. Now we will discuss sugars and health. Disaccharides and oligosaccharides are typically hydrolyzed into individual monosaccharides in the small intestine and subsequently absorbed and metabolized to yield dietary energy. For labeling purposes, most sugars are considered to provide 4 kilocalories per gram. However, subtle variations in chemical structure between different sugar components influence the way in which they are digested, absorbed, and metabolized. These variations are evident in the glycemic index of individual sweet-tasting mono and disaccharides. Some of the traditional sweeteners such as honey, agave, and carob have a lower glycemic potency than refined sugars and may therefore appeal to those following a low glycemic index diet. The low glycemic index of these products may be attributed in part to their relatively high proportion of fructose, which has a particularly low glycemic index of 19 compared with glucose with glycemic index of 100 and sucrose with glycemic index of 68. The main health concerns about sugars and sugar-rich products are their carcinogenic properties upon their excessive intake. Therefore, sugars should be eaten in moderation within balanced diets and alongside active lifestyles that promote a healthy body weight. Now we will discuss overweight and obesity. Excess consumption of calories, regardless of their source, can lead to body gain and obesity. It is unlikely that any one food group is responsible for this complicated metabolic state. However, sugar offers empty calories devoid of other nutritional benefits. By reducing the amount of sugar and thus calories in our diet, it is possible to lose weight without compromising intake of essential nutrients. Additionally, eating foods with significant sugar content can create large swings in blood glucose, leading to subsequent overconsumption of food. Furthermore, multiple studies have examined the various pathways associated with sugar consumption, noting that sugar may be an addictive substance for some individuals. This may further contribute to overeating, leading to excessive weight gain. Now, diabetes. Data from multiple studies suggests that the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages may increase risk of developing diabetes. Approximately half of the US population consumes sugar-sweetened beverages each day. Studies have observed an association between the consumption of high glycemic index foods such as sugar and the development of type 2 diabetes. Nonetheless, one of the biggest risk factors for type 2 diabetes is being overweight or obese. Reducing sugar consumption can aid in healthy weight loss, which can be very beneficial for individuals with pre-diabetes or diabetes. It is crucial to monitor sugar intake to successfully manage diabetes. Sustained elevated blood sugar can cause a myriad of health concerns, including the vision loss, kidney problems, neuropathy, and circulation issues. A balanced diet and regular physical activity can be very advantageous for the management of this condition. Now, cancer. High sugar consumption is associated with an increased risk for certain cancers, including colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, and endometrial cancer. Additionally, excess sugar consumption is a risk factor for obesity. In cancer patients, obesity is linked to poorer treatment outcomes and increased mortality. Moreover, obesity is associated with increased risk for certain cancers, including postmenopausal breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, and cancer of the liver. Now, heart disease. Research has shown that high consumption of added sugar has been linked to higher risk for cardiovascular disease. It has consistently been linked to stroke, high blood pressure, and elevated blood lipid levels. The American Heart Association recommends limiting added sugar consumption to 100 calories a day for women and 150 calories for men. Decreasing sugar consumption can improve blood cholesterol and triglyceride levels, decreasing risk for heart disease. Now we will discuss tooth decay. Sugars and starches are major contributors to tooth decay. Risk for developing dental caries increases with the frequency of consumption of foods with sugar and the longer they remain in the mouth without brushing the teeth. Sugars in the mouth are digested by bacteria on the tooth surface. Acid produced by the bacteria causes the enamel to break down, leading to cavities and gum disease. Sugar that remains on the teeth is actually of more concern than amount of sugar consumed. The acid produced by the bacteria lasts for about 20 minutes each time carbohydrate is eaten. This is true regardless of which carbohydrate containing food is eaten. Bacterial acid production is present whether the carbohydrate is glucose from concentrated sweets, starches, lactose from milk, or fructose from fruit. The stickiness of the sugar also supports bacterial growth. Oral health can be promoted by limiting between meal snacks, brushing with fluoride toothpaste, and flossing regularly. Now, consumption recommendations. Recent evaluations commissioned by the World Health Organization have concluded that limiting the amount of sugar added to foods and decreasing the intake of sugar-sweetened beverages would be beneficial in promoting public health, particularly with regard to reducing the risk of dental caries, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Consequently, the World Health Organization released a new guideline in March 2015 which recommends that adults and children reduce their daily intake of free sugars to less than 10% of their total energy intake. A further reduction to below 5% or roughly 25 grams per day would provide additional health benefits. Overall, there seems to be a consensus among government agencies and regulatory bodies that sugars should be targeted as a potential means of reducing energy intakes and thereby curbing obesity rates. Indeed, the main sources of sugars consumed in the UK population are soft drinks and fruit juices. which together contribute on average 30% of sugars intake for those aged 4 to 64 years. The amount of sugars that is added to products during food processing has therefore come under particular scrutiny. Hence, the food industry is now under pressure to reduce the sugar content of their processed products. This was all about today's program. Hope you have enjoyed it well. Thank you for watching.